joyful hello to all of you. My name is Minnku, Buttar, founder of the Circle of Joy that brings you self-mastery programs and retreats. It gives me great joy to bring to you this season's talk show, a series of interviews on choosing joy, secrets, and stories from all over the world. It is my diligent attempt to show you that joy is not a hockey-pocky, frivolous concept, but a discipline, a way of life much needed. If you want to be resilient, radiant, and unstoppable like a runaway train. So subscribe to my channel so that you can tap into the wisdom of people from all over the world. I will see you there.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the 36th episode of this talk show, Choosing Joy, Secrets and Stories from Around the World. My name is Minnku Buttar, your host from India. I'm so glad that these episodes keep you engaged and they've moved and educated and motivated enough to stick around because conventional is boring. And true to that statement, the conversation we are about to have today is fascinating, and it is, I promise you, the most informative talk we will ever have on this talk show. It's about redefining diversity and inclusion, bathroom to boardroom. Fascinating topic. So stay tuned. Be ready to clean the cobwebs of ignorance we have had for many, many years between your ears. Now, the guest speaker that I have invited today has a heart of gold, and I have enjoyed the deep, compelling, long chat with her before today. She has had 20 plus years of successful managing, growing, and spearheading very strategic initiatives for Fortune 100 companies in technology, in media, in healthcare, and life sciences. She's also the founder and CEO of Revicon. I hope I pronounced that right, Consulting LLC, and with has worked as a business coach in diversity, equity, and inclusion consultancy that educates, empowers, and advocates for transgender and gender non-binary individuals in the corporate world. She's also the vice president of Stonewall Democrats of Ventura County, advocating
county, actually, yeah.
Counties, I beg your pardon, advocating issues relevant to the LGBT Americans trans can working. She served in the Community Advisory Board for Fordham's HIV and drug abuse prevention, and currently leads the indivisible Conejo LGBTQ and actively volunteers with the Transcan work. She is the recipient of HRC's Equality Award for outstanding commitment and service to the community in 2019 and the 2017 Visionary Award as well. Please welcome her, someone who has an exemplary vision and has been a voice of bravery against injustice, against the transgender community. Welcome all the way from Los Angeles, California, Celia, Sandhya, Daniels. Welcome here, Celia, today.
Oh, thank you, Minnku. I'm so honored to be in this session, and I really enjoyed our conversations a lot. And I feel that the audience need to hear these conversations and learn, and also educate each other and educate others in different walks of life. But thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm honored.
You're so welcome. And I really want to thank you for educating me on our last call. And I really grow and I really expand so much from these heartful conversations. And that's, I think, my drive why I keep doing these talk shows. I also realized something else, Celia. It's always the lack of knowledge, like you rightfully said, and it's the ignorance of anything and anyone that doesn't work in favor of acceptance and inclusivity, right?
Absolutely.
In fact, it's the opposite. It fuels judgments and prejudices. And so understanding and supporting the LGBTQ community is no different. So I want to get into this talk a little differently today. Usually I ask about, my speaker, and I'm going to get into that later. For now, I was thinking, Celia, that I would like to park ambiguity on one side. And maybe we should first talk a little bit about the umbrella term, the gender diverse or the transgender
Mm,
community, post
absolutely.
which I would like them to know who Celia Sandhya Daniels is. Are you good with that?
Mm,
Yeah?
absolutely. Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I
Okay,
can introduce myself, reintroduce myself again.
absolutely.
I My middle name is Sandhya, Celia Sandhya Daniels, and I love this word Sandhya because I think it's a Sanskrit name
Yes.
and it's more like dusk, and it's very personal to me.
Mhm,
The reason I like that Sandhya is because a lot of times in my life, when I
mhm,
grew up, I used to I was in Chennai.
mhm.
I used to go to the Bay of Bengal and watch the sunset. And it gave me such a joy watching the sunset. And most of the issues and the sorrows and the traumas that I carried as a child was probably diminishing when the sun was setting
Wow.
in the horizon in Bay of Bengal.
Mm,
And that's the way I grew up in my life. And I would love to get into these terms. And I identify as a gender non-binary.
uh-huh.
Now, to help the audience understand, my pronouns are she and they. I will help you understand a few
Right.
nuances in terms of
Mhm,
the trans community and what exactly these terminologies are. Most of the terminologies that I'm going to be talking about, this is
mhm.
based on the medical community
Right.
across the world, not just in US, but
Mhm,
also across the world.
mm,
So when you look at cisgender community and transgender community, cisgender are people who identify in the gender they're born, identify in the birth gender. So someone who's born as a woman, like yourself,
mm.
Minnku, you are born as a woman and you identify as a woman, and that's very simple. That's called cisgender,
This-
CIS gender.
mhm,
Now, transgender folks are the ones who are born in one gender, but they do not, and they identify in another gender,
mhm.
or sometimes they identify in both genders. So that's why they're called transgender. And I'll go a little bit deeper into the transgender community
Please.
where there are binaries and non-binaries.
Mhm,
Now, that's the first thing you need to know about cisgender folks and transgender. It's not the word normal people. In India, we use a term called, people who are normal, and people like you are not normal. That's a
mm.
very wrong term. Even for people with disabilities, we should never say
Absolutely.
normal people and people with disabilities.
Again,
Every
ignorance, Celia, ignorance.
Exactly. I
Yeah,
think it's all a matter of the semantics and how do you use the language so that it's not hurtful to
absolutely.
to our audience, and especially the folks within the community.
Mhm,
So cisgender, transgender is the first term. The second thing is LGBTQ plus is an American term. It's a Western term of
mhm.
using LGBTQ. They just put everybody into this little bucket. But
Ah,
I'm really glad that in India,
mm,
we don't club everybody as LGBTQ,
mm,
but there is the transgender community has been always there in India. It's a 4,000 or even 7,000-year-old culture.
mm,
And they were revered, in fact, in the temples when these are times when before colonialism, there was so much of respect for the transgender community. And the LG and B, they are dealing with sexual orientation, or
mhm,
they are more focused on sexual orientation. But the trans community, they are more focused on gender identity. It is
mm,
not sexual orientation, it's gender identity. It is very different.
mm,
If you want to remember in a very easy and funny way, sexual orientation is between your thighs,
mm.
gender identity is between your ears.
Yes.
It's a funny way to remember.
No, fantastic way to remember.
Yeah, yeah. And it's about whom sexual orientation is whom you're attracted to, defines
Mm,
your sexuality
mm,
or sexual orientation. But
mm,
gender identity is who you are. So
mm,
to me, it is very important as to who I am rather than whom I'm attracted to.
mm,
So the other part of the transgender community, just going a little bit deeper, is within the transgender community umbrella.
mm,
It's an umbrella term for folks who are in the binaries and non-binaries. Binaries means male or female. That's what we call as binary heterosexual in the society. So even within the trans community, you have binaries where people transition from male to female or female to male. And they're very clear about they want to identify with male and the female nomenclature and the societal terminologies that exist in the community today, and they want to identify as a male or identify as a female.
Mm-hmm.
Gender non-binary, or I would call the gender expansive community,
Mm-hmm.
is more about people who are gender fluid, gender neutral, gender non-binary, gender non-conforming, and the agender, bigender. There's so many terminologies, but basically what they say is, I don't belong to one gender. Sometimes my gender just oscillates. It's like an autistic spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I feel like I want to be a woman today, and suddenly they feel like I want to be a man. And it's also very interesting when you really get into this community. And even as in my own life, when I was 4 years old, I told my mom that I wanted to be a girl, but I did not,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't hate being a boy. I liked
Oh.
the privilege of being a boy because it was so much of attention growing up as a boy in India. But inside I knew I was a girl, and I didn't know how to explain to my mom. All I told my mom was, I want to be a girl. I want to be a girl. My mom said, okay, fine. We're going to put you some clothes and you can have fun. You can wear your cousin's clothes. So I was wearing my cousin's clothes, and probably around 6 or 7 years old, my mom told me that you're a boy. You cannot wear these clothes anymore.
Mm.
In my mind, I'm thinking I'm gender fluid. I can be a boy and a girl. But when my mom said, no, you have to follow a particular social construct of adhering to the community where you got to choose between a boy and a girl, I couldn't really do that. Now,
Mm.
another term which is very important, I want to quickly explain, is gender dysphoria. Now, there is a question which everyone asks as to why trans people are like this. Is it a lifestyle choice? Is it something they choose? Being trans is not a choice. It's something who you are. You are born as a trans, or you're born as an LGBTQ person. You're a LGBT person.
Mm.
You don't go and pick and choose saying, you know what, it's cool to be trans. I'm going to be trans.
Yeah, it's not
In
a cool thing. It is who you are. I totally
of
get
course,
it. Yeah. Yeah.
it's not a cool thing, because you go through a lot of discrimination, ostracization from the community.
Of course.
And I remember in the early 70s when I came out, I was in my ninth grade. I walked outside and I thought maybe the society will, they will think that this is a boy wearing a dress. So I
Mm.
went a long skirt and I was walking out in the streets, and there was a security guard who caught hold of me,
Mm.
and they literally humiliated me for almost 20 minutes. There were close to 20 people, and
Goodness.
all adults. And
Mm.
here,
Mm.
where I question the society as to why are you hating me
Mm.
because I'm presenting myself in another gender. I was not inappropriate in my clothing. I wore a really conservative top and a long skirt,
Mm.
and I had a scarf around my head. But they looked at me and used the most derogatory language in the Indian dictionary in Tamil Nadu, and they told me that you cannot exist here. I want to know where's your dad, because we're going to beat you up and take you to your dad. And I was so scared.
So sad. Yeah.
Um, and that's the moment where I spoke in another language and ran away from that place. But
Mm.
what people don't understand is this is not a lifestyle choice. Gender dysphoria is like a spectrum in a scale of 1 to 10.
Mm.
I don't know if you know about autistic spectrum. It's a spectrum where
Absolutely.
some of the folks are probably a 10 in the autistic spectrum.
Mm.
Some
Mm.
of them are maybe a 1 or 2. I
Mm.
have a little bit of autism in my spectrum. It's probably at a very minimal level.
Okay.
But going back to gender dysphoria, it is actually an incongruence between your birth gender and the gender that you think you belong to.
Yeah.
And the American Psychiatric Association, the medical journals, they have found that gender dysphoria is a very important terminology,
Mm.
and they categorize that as a mental health issue. And
Mm.
it's no longer a mental health issue, it's a medical condition of a person. So I am like this because I have gender dysphoria, and I
Mm.
was born this way. I didn't, it's, trust me, nobody wants to be a trans.
Yeah.
It's
And
like we don't want to choose to be a trans.
really, really, Celia, if only we could understand. And I really
Mm,
feel that it's not, say, if I take my example, it's not for me to judge another person's life. If I
right.
must judge, I must choose and spurn purely for myself, you know, for
Mm,
myself alone. And so I can imagine. So now, if I was to interpret what you just said, and I'm just going to repeat it so our audience,
mm,
and if I got this right, so gender dysphoria is the inevitable psychological distress, right? That
mhm.
that comes from the incongruence and a sense of, I would say, even unease between one's sex assigned at birth and one's gender identity. Did I get that right? Yeah.
Yeah. So the word sex is basically used as gender these days. We don't use sex anymore because
Mhm.
you're either a male or a
So
female,
nice
and
to
it's a
know that.
gender.
It's a gender.
But sex assigned at birth, like you rightly said, is used in the medical term
Yeah.
because a trans person like myself, if I go to the doctor's office
Mhm.
and I say that I'm a trans person, they will first ask me, "We understand, Celia, but what is your sex assigned at
Yes.
birth?"
Yeah.
And I'll
Yeah.
have to tell them that I'm a
Yeah.
male, and
Mm.
then my authentic gender is female now.
Yeah.
So now they
Correct.
will understand.
Yeah.
And but yeah,
Yeah.
that's the way it is.
So Celia,
Mm.
we also see pronouns like they and them.
Mm.
How would we interpret this? Is that like a social transition? What's happening there?
So when we talked about the trans community, there's a binary and a non-binary.
Mm.
So a trans person who's male to female will choose the pronouns as
Yeah.
she, her, herself.
Mm.
And a person who is male, female to male will
Yeah.
use the pronouns as he, him.
Right.
Now, when you come to the gender expansive community, and in the gender expansive community, people can at sometimes feel that I'm neither a man nor a woman, and I want to choose the pronouns, and they didn't have a pronoun at the time, and that's why they go with the they them pronouns. In in Hindi, I don't know what they say for they them. We don't say aap, or we say o log, or
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah. It's like a third
they,
person because
third
people
person,
don't know what to
without a
address.
gender,
Yes.
without putting a gender to it,
Yeah.
we use
Uh-huh.
that. And it's in English language you don't have, unfortunately, and that's why they have they. But in
They and them.
Spanish also sometimes there is very gendered.
Mm.
So they means they are not identifying within the heteronormative social structure of male or female, and that's why they use they. And
Right.
I sometimes feel that I'm more in the they, but when I use she and they, what it means is I identify as gender non-binary first. That
Mm.
means I don't identify with any gender,
Mm.
but I'm more female expressing. I'm more feminine in my
Yeah.
expression.
Yeah.
So, and that's why I love, and that's why I use the pronouns as she and they. And the
I
same thing also
yeah.
happens to he and they, where
Mm.
the person
Totally.
is more masculine presenting, and they are gender non-binary, but more masculine presenting. So that's why we use the word. So they means it's referred to the gender expansive community or gender non-binary community. They use pronouns as they. Yeah.
Totally. Thank you so much for it. And then if you know do you remember the last time we talked? I've actually mentioned to your friend in New Delhi, when
Mm,
I was 21, uh, she, she had a surgical affirmation. So I want to touch a little bit about gender
mm,
affirmative support, that we talked about. And
mm,
this friend of mine, I remember, she did the complete female to male sex reassignment, even in those days. And it was a
mm,
surgical affirmation. And, it was complete with a phallus and a urethra for standing urination. And they
mm,
even allotted a scrotum for testicular implants. It
mm.
was quite baffling to me at 21. But today, the more I've read about it over the years, and especially after I talked that day, so, Celia, my question to you is, I'm getting the impression that not all the transgender community desire any affirmation at all. So, in which case, what are the resources and the framework that is needed today so that this associated psychological distress that you talked about, and I'm quite sure it must be so hard, people don't understand it. It can lead to low self-esteem, to depression, even suicidal ideation. What
Right. Yeah.
how how what kind of transitioning resources and support is needed out there according to you?
Absolutely. So transition for a trans person or a person with the gender expansive community, it can be four types of transition. The first one is personal transition, and
Mhm.
then social transition, legal transition, and medical transition.
Right.
And sometimes they are in the same, or they are in the order this
Mhm.
way. First thing, personal transition is more emotional, spiritual, where you feel that you are different and you accept that. For me, this personal transition took 40 years
Okay.
because I was in denial.
Yeah.
And I had to agree that I was a trans person,
Yeah.
and I couldn't because I thought I'm not trans. So the personal transition is very important. The second thing is social transition, where you present yourself in the community as in your authentic gender. If you, for me, I was starting to present as Celia when I came to this country. This is probably 25 years back. I started presenting as Celia because to me that was an authentic gender. And so that is the social transition. And it's not medical, it's social, like trying to find areas where I'll be accepted in a bars or clubs or places where I felt that I would not be judged.
Judge.
And I'm talking about early 70s or 80s
Yeah.
when I was struggling in India, and also when I came to places in like New York, it was more accepted than North Carolina or a few other states today in the country in United States. The next transition is called legal transition, where you can transition legally without medically transitioning. So you could change your name, you could change your gender marker. So my gender marker is X in US, in California. My driver's license says that. And my name is still Daniels because I have property back in India. And
Right.
for immigrants like myself, I can't
Yeah.
just change my
Yeah.
name and I'll lose a lot of things. The second thing is also
Yes.
the fact that I don't want to transition because I have medical conditions, and hormonal issues can cause a lot more issues within my with the cholesterol medicines I'm taking, with the blood pressure medicines I'm taking, and I'm diabetic also, and I have cardiovascular issues,
Oh,
like
yeah.
lots of other issues
Yeah.
which are, I have lots of things and I can't just medically transition like anyone else. And
But Celia, would you, if
mhm.
you say did not have this, is how important is that for you? Or you're comfortable, you're braver, you're bolder, you're more vocal.
I think the most important thing is I'm out in the community today. I live as Celia,
Mm.
and I have not medically transitioned. So you don't have to
You don't
medically
have to.
transition
Yeah.
because people don't know whether you're medically transitioned or not. And it's
You're
not
right.
necessary,
You're
right? When
right.
they look at me, they always think that I'm on hormones or I'm medically
Yeah.
transitioned. And I say no.
Wow.
And that's a big, I think that's a big change in the medical community or in the trans community, where
Mm.
people can still be who they are authentically without medically transitioning. And also the clinical studies over a period of time, if you are probably more than 40, sometimes based on the bone condition, the bone structure, a lot of trans men have osteoporosis and issues, and it's much more escalated when you have these issues.
Mm.
So there could be hormonal implications because of from the medical side. I can talk in length on that side because my background is the medical science. But
Right.
I can also talk about the final transition, which is called the medical transition, and they call it as GAS, gender affirmation surgery. And
Surgery.
those days they use the word as SRS, which is sexual reassignment surgery.
Mhm.
And it's not a sex they're trying to replace, they're actually trying to affirm the gender. And that's why the community started calling it as gender affirmation surgery.
Surgery.
And
GA.
that's happening in India today also.
Yes,
So
in a big
these are
way.
the four
Yeah.
transitions.
Thank you. In fact, I was reading that there's a total count of almost 4.88 lakhs. I don't know how you relate to lakhs, but 100,000 transgender communities in India today. And I actually want to congratulate you, Celia, for coming out and taking a stance. And this is long before this was an accepted norm. But in India, there's still a lot of discrimination and stigma. I don't know how many more decades. And but also what I'm really proud of you as an Asian Indian trans woman of color, you have taken a leap to get your voice heard in the corporate circles, right? As a business coach in diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant, you have been educating, empowering. How has your work been received, Celia, in the corporate? What resistance or acceptance are you finding? How's that going for you? Share that. What do you think has
Oh,
happened?
absolutely. And just to give you a quick idea about my background, I have 23 plus years of experience working with the Fortune 100 companies. I was 3 levels below the CEO in one of the consulting firms, which is a top 5 consulting
Oh,
firm.
amazing.
And I was leading the R&D for North America in some of the consulting firms that I worked with.
Mhm.
And I was a client partner. I was at a senior director level, moving up to the vice president level. And there was a time in my life when I felt like I was not living. I was very unhappy. I was very successful as a businessman, but I was very unhappy Because to me, I had come out in the society, but I had not come out at work.
Ah,
So I had almost presented myself as Celia, and people in the community knew me as Celia, but at work, I had to present as Daniel, and that caused a lot of gender dysphoria. So
mm,
gender dysphoria is like you're literally living in two parallel universes.
right.
And here I was this woman, and then when I go to the office, I'll pretend like I'm a man. So for
Mm,
me, I couldn't pretend like a woman because I'm a woman. And to
mm,
me, I didn't pretend like a trans woman, right? I mean, I didn't have to pretend as a trans woman because I am a trans woman. I
yeah,
wouldn't say I'm a woman, I'm a trans woman. But
yeah.
when I think about myself as a man, I had to pretend like I was this successful business brown man, and I was wearing a suit and I was doing all presentations. I had $250 million targets. I had 800 people across in India reporting to me,
Mm,
and almost like 150 people reporting to me in Thousand Oaks.
wow.
So in California, I had a large team. I was doing very well in my business. I had even got awards from my clients, and I
Mm,
always was good in customer satisfaction because I really focused on what the client needs. But here's the thing, sometimes your mental health can take a toll on you, and that's what
absolutely.
happened to me. And I didn't know what to do. And sometimes I'll just stop talking to my wife, and we both be going on a walk, and she'll say, "Are you okay?" And I'll then remember that I'm so sorry. I stopped talking because my mind is just wandering somewhere.
Absolutely. Totally.
Um,
Yeah.
and that's when I felt like I need to come out at work.
Mm,
And I came out. And when I quit one of my companies, I came out as Celia and I wanted to join. And before I quit, companies like even Accenture used to call me and say, "Hey, we know who you are. No interview for you. Just come in, change your business card on Monday, and we want you to, start managing the entire West Coast." And
incredible.
that's the way I was very good in my business. I have my master's in computer science, and I was really very successful with companies like Dun& Bradstreet, Cognizant, pharmaceutical companies, IQVIA, Capgemini. I worked with all these companies. But here's the thing, your mental health takes a toll on you. And
Mm,
that's when I felt like I cannot be Daniel anymore, and I have to change,
mm.
and I have to come out as Celia. When I did, companies wouldn't hire me because
Oh,
now
they
what
wouldn't
happened,
hire you.
they wouldn't hire me
Oh,
because they are more comfortable working with a white male or a brown male who is a businessman rather than even women were struggling to be in those roles. And at that time, mostly white women were probably doing okay. So it's like white men, white women, men, black women, and then when going down to the people of color, Asians and other
yeah.
men, and then you had the Asian women. And imagine coming out as
Asian
from
Indian trans women of color.
Indian
Yes.
man to going down to a trans woman at the bottom of the food chain. So
Mm,
if a white male is getting $1, I was probably getting $15. So my salary came down by 40%.
oh my goodness.
So
I
because nobody would hire a woman of color, and then thinking about a woman of color who's an immigrant, and now you are trans. Oh, we don't know how to hire you. We
see.
have a job for you. Would you
Yeah.
like to be an admin coordinator? Would you like to,
Mm,
because you look nice, why don't you just sit there and be a brand for us? And that's what companies wanted me to do. And they brought my
cannot
salary down.
believe
And I said,
it. Yeah,
you know what? I have so much of experience, and you're just marginalizing my experience in the corporate world.
absolutely.
And I applied for 40 plus companies. I went for interviews. I went for job interviews to
Mm,
all the companies here in North America. And I applied everywhere. And none of the companies would hire me because when I mentioned trans and I put Celia, she,
mm.
they immediately knew that, oh, this is a problematic situation. And that's when I started talking about it.
Yeah,
So
you're a huge
I then,
advocate. But Celia, tell me, what was the resistance? I mean, I really want you to
oh,
break this down. What was the resistance? Here you are with all that experience, good amount of delivery, you know your subject. Where was the resistance coming from?
the resistance was basically because of the senior level that I wanted to be in. And
Mm,
I was a senior director in the companies, and I wanted to join as a senior director or above, as a vice president in some of the consulting firms.
mm.
They are not willing to even hire a woman at a senior director
Of
or a vice
course.
president level. Where do you think they're going to hire a trans person? It's
Mm,
not going to happen.
mm.
But they are willing to hire me, but at a very low level, as probably a programmer or an analyst or
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, I sold, pharmaceutical business, BPO business for $30 million in India. And I hired almost like 600 people back in Pune.
Mm.
And I set up the office and I ran the whole thing for my clients. And now when I came out of Celia, they were offering a case processing manager as one of the 600 people in India. They're giving me a job as one of those 600 people who would process adverse event cases for pharmaceutical companies. And to me, my mind was just blowing. And I said, look, I hired case managers in my portfolio so that they could manage my business.
Yeah.
And you're giving me a job that way. And why are you not able to hire me at that level? They were not able to answer a question. Even a senior
Were
vice
they
president of
obliged?
financial.
Were they obliged to give you an answer, and how authentic?
Right, right. And there was this particular person. She gave me an answer one day, and I applied for a senior director position in a financial company. And she saw my resume. They were very impressed with my resume, and they said, "We want to bring you in." And she told me this was a transgender job fair. They came to the job fair to hire transgender people, but they did not expect transgender people, folks like me, to be educated. They don't mind me working in a restaurant, buzzing tables,
Uh,
and blue
I
collar
see.
jobs,
Yeah, they're
right?
ticking that
They
box.
just
That makes them
ticking
look good.
boxes. But when
Yeah.
I said I'm a white collar person, I was senior director, I'm not compromising. And that's where I think companies were not able to place me. And they said, you know what? We don't know how to place you. But here's the thing, if you are a trans person at a manager level and you keep transitioning within the company, you're okay. And you can be a vice president in the company because you came out in that company. Company now cannot fire you. But
Right.
when you try to join, if I try today, if I'm sending my resume to Accenture and I tell them, hey, do you want to hire me? They will. I'm giving it to you in writing. They cannot and they will not hire me at a management director
Yeah,
or a
I see what
senior
you
director, vice president level. They will not hire me because it is a threat to their own culture.
mean.
And this is not against Accenture. Accenture is a good company, but
Yeah.
I'm just giving you an example. Just the role that you sometimes want to be in these positions did not happen. I also tried a funny experiment. I changed my resume back to Daniel after
Okay.
1 year of searching. I was desperate. And I changed my resume and I just took off all the pronouns and everything. It's a plain vanilla brown guy who is very successful.
Mm.
And I got 3 interviews in 1 month. 3 interviews in 1 month. And every time in my interview, I don't have to explain what they won't ask me questions. They will say, please enlighten us. And
Yeah.
I will just talk because to me, this was my blood and,
Yeah.
butter.
Yeah. I
And
totally see
it
that.
was in my blood.
Yeah.
I will just talk and they will say, when can you join? And that's how it was. I did not join. I could not join. So I started my own company.
Mm.
And now what I did was I started going back to my clients who I used to consult as Daniels. And I started consulting them.
Celia. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I do now. And so they're all very happy because I'm not a threat to their own
Yeah.
framework and
Yeah.
infrastructure. So they're like, okay, you're a consultant. Great. We will, you can come and tell us what to do. So I've been
Yeah.
consulting at least in that capacity. And I have my own autonomy. I run my own business and I educate my clients and I tell them what to do. And I tell them without mincing the words. I
Yeah. Yeah.
openly tell them that you're wrong here. Maybe you can correct here. And here's my thing. I always want to be a trusted advisor to my clients when I work with them. I respect what they do, even if they are not in the diversity spectrum, if they're probably a zero. I
Hmm.
work with them to try to help change them. And
To
that's what is important.
Yeah, yeah, and you're
Yeah.
working with HR, Celia. You're working with the legal teams, and
Right.
I loved what I read in your portfolio. You know, the bathroom to boardroom activism.
Mm,
That's really fascinating because that's literally what it is, and you're advocating for the community. That's amazing. Now, having said that, going back to what you stressed on about gender dysphoria, I was reading, when I was preparing and
mm,
to come and have this interview with you.
absolutely.
Apparently, on March 16, 2023, just we're on the 20 plus today. The transgender healthcare ban in Florida happened. You must be aware of
Mm,
it. That
absolutely.
the minors can no longer make changes to the body to transition. And of course, there's been a huge protest because I can understand, Celia, that the family and the societal, the rejection, the stigmatization, the victimization, uh, Oh, so how is that? We have March 31st coming as well.
Mhm.
So imagine the kind of havoc and the voices out there in the International Transgender Day of Visibility. What
Mm.
message, Celia? I hope your message goes wide globally. What is the message you would like to give to the world that will make you and the community more seen and heard?
Absolutely. I think the biggest problem that we have today is ignorance and
Mm.
also there's arrogance. You can
Yeah.
educate people who are ignorant, but you can never educate people who are arrogant. So people from an ignorant standpoint have moved to an arrogance where they say that I don't understand this area, but I don't care. Now that is the threat
Huge.
because children, they are not saying that I want to transition, and there is an age for it. When
Mhm.
they're young, they are given hormone blockers so they can decide whether they want to pursue their gender journey or not. But unfortunately, and the parents know that because the parents are going through the agony of, I know a lot of parents today
Yes.
who I have two support groups that run one of them. And I also have a support group where parents come and talk about the children's issues. They see that the children are not happy. And when they transition,
Mhm.
the joy that you see in their face, it's so amazing.
Yeah.
And parents know exactly what to do for the children than the state or
Mm.
country telling what to do for the children, because the country or the politicians are not involved in the lives of the trans people.
Mm.
And that is where I think the government is just trying to do all this because of the airtime they get in the media, especially the election is coming.
Oh,
They want to hit a vulnerable community, and they have a lot of airtime by just picking one of the vulnerable communities and beating them up. They know today. I don't think the dissenters or Trump or any of the conservative people understand trans community. All they're saying is, I hate this community. Let's just spread hate and let's have ignorance. So it has become very political. And that's why my only thing is what I want to tell people today, if you're listening in this call, is humanize trans issues. Don't politicize trans issues. We are human beings like anyone else. We want to live, we want to thrive, we want to be empowered in the society. We don't want empathy. Empathy is great. We want to move from empathy to empowerment. And that's what I saw in the corporate industries. They want to empathize with you, they don't want to empower you. Even in India today, if I am in the boardroom, I don't think they will even allow a trans person in the boardroom in some of these Fortune 100 companies that has global offices today because they are not there yet. Lynn Conway, who was the one who invented the IBM chip when she came out in the 70s or 60s, she was cast, she was ostracized in the in her company in IBM.
mm.
Now they realize that. And I think the only reason is because of awareness and education. So the more awareness, the more
Mhm.
education that happens in our
Mhm.
society, these type of podcasts where they really listen to the community.
Yes.
I want to leave with one word for the audience, Minnku. I think it's called allies. How to be an ally to the community. A is acknowledge your privilege. L is to listen to the community. Another L is to learn to unlearn things that you have learned. And then I is to initiate tough conversations and decisions in your company. E is to educate yourself and to educate others. And lastly, S is to be supportive by being involved. Don't just give money to the Hijra community when they're coming and singing. Ask them, how can I support you more? What can I do to educate you? How do you want me to help you? And that conversation will make a huge difference. And before I came out, I used to think that I don't want to even do anything with the transgender community because the ostracization is created such a way that the society creates that stigma, and it's going on from generations to generations that the children who are younger, my daughter is asking me the question as to how can we help them now that you are trans? How can we help them? And I was thinking to myself, as this is a community that I really didn't want to associate with, and now I'm a part of the community, and I didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
So I do help a lot in India. I work with Sahodri Foundation with Kalki
Yes,
Subramaniam. She's a great friend of mine.
absolutely. With Kalki, and I do
I
intend, thank you for that connect. I will be reaching out to her
Yeah,
at one point and seeing how we may be more supportive. But thank you, Celia, so, so much. I'm
Absolutely.
so glad, thank you for your candidness and your information. And maybe today we planted some seeds of introspection. Let them, I just want the audience to start thinking of what is it that they didn't know. And then, with so much of knowledge, I hope we can create more tolerance, inclusivity, and unconditional love. And like you said, humanize and leave the politics out. So on that note, Celia, if I can take you from this intense topic away to the rapid fire round that I always do. These
Sure.
are very quirky, spontaneous, brief answers.
Mm.
So let's bring some cheer.
Mhm.
So
I like that. Yeah.
yeah. I'm a joy queen, right? My company is called the Circle of Joy. And it's about exactly the same. How can we bring joy and cheer in this world? It's not a hockey pocky, feeling. It's actually almost a deep spiritual space joy. So on that note, if you're ready, the first rapid fire question coming your way. What brings you joy, Celia?
Music brings me joy.
Look, I did not know that. What genre of music do you listen to usually?
I'm more, I would say, soft rock. That's
Okay. Okay.
so music like
Wonderful.
Dire Straits,
Yeah.
the older,
Absolutely. We grew up listening to that.
yeah, like Scorpions. I was playing Scorpions yesterday at home. I was just fingering the Still Loving You.
Wonderful.
Love Led Zeppelin, all kind of music. So,
Absolutely. I actually had an episode with Tony McLeodis, who's worked with all of them. The second
wow.
question coming to you, the most defiant thing you have ever done that you can think, what comes up to you?
The most
Defiant thing.
fine.
Yeah, defiant. What have you done?
You mean more challenging or?
Yeah. I mean, I know that just talking about the community and bringing information. Yeah. Or what have you done that took a lot of courage?
Oh, tons of things. I was in front of the mayor of my county. I just went and I just told him directly on his face that I'm a human being, you're a human being. Why do you hate me without knowing me? And he didn't know what to say.
Absolutely.
This is like your local district
Yeah,
politician.
absolutely. Mayor. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the
I
mayor of
love that. I
it could be a big
sometimes,
change.
Celia, call a spade, and I love that.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, the third question for you. If you were shipwrecked on a deserted island
Mhm.
and you had your human needs of food and water, they were taken care of, what are the two items you would want with you other than food and water?
I want my guitar,
Hmm.
my box guitar. And
Right.
the other thing that I would need is probably if I have a box guitar, everything, it falls into place. But the second item probably would be a mode of transportation, like a bicycle, or if it's an island, then probably a kayak or something.
Fitness time. I love
Oh
that.
yeah,
I
absolutely.
love that.
Mm.
Just play the guitar and now you go like, okay, I ate too much. Now let's get that exercise thing out and,
Mhm.
and then go back to the guitar. I love that.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you're walking on the road and you meet Biden. What are you going to tell him?
My first point to him would be, thank you for thinking about people like me. And I know he has done a lot for the trans community. I have probably less than 10 seconds with him. I'll just say, hey, thank you for being there for us and speaking up for our community. And that's all I'm going to tell him. And today, even
Wonderful.
if I go to the White House, that's what I'm going to tell him.
Wonderful. Wonderful. We will hashtag him, and I'm sure
Mhm.
somehow the universe will carry your words across to him. The last
Absolutely.
question, what's the voice in your head saying right now? And you can be really frank and outright with this one.
The voice in my head right now, it's this morning, I would say I'm hungry.
So am I. It's dinner, way beyond dinner
Yeah,
here.
I've got my avocado here, and it's like, oh, I need to eat something, you know. I take medicines because of my heart condition,
Yeah.
and so I have to eat something quickly. And I was thinking maybe after this conversation, I'll tell Minnku that, you know, I need to have my breakfast. So if you're asking my
Okay.
frank opinion, I'm hungry.
Yes, I reciprocate that completely. My salad awaits me. Thank you
Mm.
once again, Celia. Thank you for the laughs. Thank you for the intensity. Thank you for the introspection. Thank you, Celia, for being you.
Oh, thank you. So thank you, Minnku. I feel so honored, and I definitely love what you're doing, and keep doing this because we need these platforms for us to elevate these voices, and especially across the masses in India. Thank you so much for what you're doing.
Thank
Really appreciate it.
you. It's
Mhm.
been a pleasure. Celia, where can people find you? Which is the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, not on TikTok yet, but it's Cecilia San Daniels.
Okay,
Sandhya is my middle name, so it's only SAN. Daniels is my handle.
right, right.
And on LinkedIn, I am available. So people can, I'm more active on LinkedIn because I love the corporate circle where you can make a
Yeah.
change. And yeah, of course, if you just go and Google Celia Sandhya Daniels, you'll find me. So
Yeah, we all thrive in LinkedIn, and I'm very, very happy to share you with my tribe. And let's say bye to our global audience, and let this journey of self-actualization, contentment, and empowerment turn into, I would say, a state of living acceptance. And I keep coming back to that somehow today while talking to you, that acceptance is such an art. Seriously, it's almost a
mhm.
science. So thank you. And join me, Celia, to say bye to our listeners from all over the world. And I will again see you on the first. Actually, this episode will be published on the 31st of May because it is the Visibility Day worldwide.
Yes.
We decided,
International Transgender Day of
yes,
Visibility.
of
Yeah.
visibility. And so thank you and bye bye to everyone.
Thank you, and have a
Namaste.
wonderful day, everyone. I love dancing, so.
We can do that together. Absolutely. We share our roots
Mhm.
together. Absolutely. To more joy in the
Yeah,
world. Thank you. And have a
absolutely.
wonderful time everywhere, wherever you are in the
Thank
world.
you.